So, Peacemaker recently finished its first season, and since I did a video talking about the announcement for this show, I thought I'd give my thoughts on Season 1. And fair warning, while I will try not to give any huge developments away, there will be spoilers. First off, the series was great, possibly the best DC TV show in ages. The characters were complex but likable, and played off each other exceptionally well. Even the peripheral characters like the janitor and the police gave you reasons to care about them. And that opening theme, greatest opening theme ever, 10 out of 10. I can't even tell you how many times I watched it after the first episode. It was just brilliant. It perfectly portrayed the craziness that this series is. So first off, the cast. John Cena shined in his role. The character of the Peacemaker was much different than the comics. All three of the main heroes, Peacemaker, Vigilante, and Judo Master, varied greatly from their comic book counterparts. But for this show's version of Peacemaker, John Cena played him perfectly. His comic timing was excellent, and he managed to portray the conflicting characteristics of a character who is on the outside a major jerkhole, but ultimately used it to hide a sensitivity and vulnerability that his own messed up upbringing made him feel he had to hide from others. It couldn't have been an easy role to play, but Cena nailed every aspect of it, and I'm not sure how many others could have done it better. He also has no shame, as shown in many of the scenes in this show with a more non-kid-friendly nature. Again, I could do a 10-minute video praising John Cena's performance. I was skeptical when I heard he would be portraying the character on the Suicide Squad, but whatever lingering doubts I still had disappeared entirely with this show. The rest of the main cast also shined. Freddie Stroma almost stole the show whenever he was on screen with his portrayal of Vigilante. The character varied greatly from the comic book to the point that they could have changed his name and costume, and I doubt anyone would have gotten that this was who he was supposed to be. He had more in common with Deadpool than anyone else. But for the version of Vigilante the show gave us, he was perfect in the role as an oblivious sociopath and foiled to our hero that made Peacemaker look like a normal, well-adjusted member of the team by comparison. Danielle Brooks as Adebayo was also a great addition to the show. She was an original character not from the comics, and although it sounds like a generic comment to make, she really was unlike any lead you normally would see in these types of shows. And she wasn't any comic relief either. This plus-size African-American lesbian was arguably the second lead in the show after Cena, and the one given the most depth and character development out of anyone. I was not familiar with Brooks before this, but she made a fan out of me, and I hope this leads to nothing but good things in her career. Chukwudi Iwuji played team leader Mern, who was also an original character made for the show, much like Adebayo. While he did get outshined by the rest of the cast in a lot of ways, his character had one of the more interesting twists, and Iwuji was spot on as a put-upon leader trying to corral this team full of misfits. Jennifer Holland played Amelia Harcourt, reprised her role from the Suicide Squad movie. This casting seemed to get some criticism as apparently she and showrunner James Gunn are tight, so many screamed this was the only reason she got the part. No idea if that's true or not, but Holland played Amelia Harcourt excellently. It would be easy to take her character and just make her the generic woman badass type, but the writing and Holland's performance gave her enough compassion and empathy to make her feel like a real character and not a cliche. Stephen Gee reprised the role as John Economist from the Suicide Squad movie, as well as the comics, much like Harcourt. I think his character was probably the weakest, as he played the sort of comic relief type well, but his in-over-his-head storyline seemed counterproductive to Adebayo, whose story was told better, and as the comic foiled a Peacemaker, he was outshined by Vigilante. Agee gave a great performance, especially the surprisingly somber moment in the season finale that was a highlight of the series. But I also questioned if the show really needed the character, as he seemed a collection of character tropes that other characters filled much better. And then there was Robert Patrick, the T-1000 himself, as Peacemaker's father and semi-retired supervillain, the White Dragon, Agee Smith. Patrick was perfect in the role, as he may have been an old man, but he would be intimidating at any age. And he relished the chance to play an irredeemable scumbag. One that only made Peacemaker look good for overcoming his father enough to not be an even bigger douchebag than he already was, given what we see of who raised him. The character had no real arc, he was an irredeemable POS the entire time, but he played it well, and the White Dragon, a low-level villain from the comic, looked amazing. Seriously, props to the costume designer on that suit. There was no way I thought they could make the White Dragon look visually cool, but damn if they didn't pull it off. The supporting cast are a bit more of a mixed bag, Everyone gave good performances for what they were given, but no doubt some got better material to work with than others. Rizwan Manji, I believe that's how you say it, I apologize if I got it wrong, but he was the best of the supporting cast as Jamil, the hospital janitor. He only got a couple of scenes, but he shined in them both, especially in the first episode where his exchange with Peacemaker was laugh-out-loud funny and set the tone we would be getting for this show perfectly. The police officers were mostly there to be a means to an end in the final part of the story, but Annie Chang and Lachlan Monroe both delivered performances that made you both care about them with the limited time they got, and made their eventual fate resonate a lot more than on paper it probably should have. New lead played Judo Master, better known to comic fans as everyone's least favorite Charlton hero. I don't know much about the character from the comics, I'm not sure anyone does. DC's never known what to do with him, and he was likely added in as a joke due to him and Peacemaker both being Charlton characters originally published by Charlton before DC bought them out. He's easily in the running for the most obscure DC character to be adapted to live action, but he was hilarious in the scenes he was in and delivered some great fight scenes. Time will tell if he'll actually build some interest in the comic character. First time for anything, but it won't be for lack of trying, and although he didn't do a whole lot this season in terms of the overall storyline, I do think they plan to do more with him next season. Then there's Elizabeth Ludlow as Adebayo's wife, Kia. She was there. Seriously, I'm not picking on the actress. She had nothing to work with, but for someone who got so much presence in the opening intro, I was surprised how little she had to do in the show. In fact, flipping us off at the intro was easily the most impact she had all season. She existed to give Adebayo someone to talk to and worry about endangering with a risky line of work, and to provide conflict to whether or not to continue with the team due to it straining her relationship. But most of this could have almost been accomplished by making the character one that was mentioned but never seen, which might have made her more interesting if there had been some mystery to her. The early talk about how Adebayo's line of work would endanger her made me think there was some payoff, maybe she would get possessed by a butterfly at some point. But there never was. It really did feel like there was foreshadowing. I wonder if maybe for some reason they changed that. But as it stands, she was a character who was very prominent in the intro and did next to nothing in the show. Hopefully, if she's in Season 2, they'll give her more to work with. The show was produced by James Gunn, who wrote all the episodes as well, so his fingerprints were all over it. Say what you will about James Gunn's controversial behavior, but he's definitely good at what he does. This show followed Gunn's reliable formula of having an ensemble of a bunch of eccentric characters in a madcap adventure full of comedy, action, and a surprisingly amount of serious moments and emotional moments sprinkled in, with all the great dialogue and plot twists Gunn does so well. The show had the Peacemaker hired by a team formed by Suicide Squad leader Amanda Waller to take on an extraterrestrial threat known as the Butterflies. As far as I could find, they were villains created specifically for the TV show. They're not taken from the comics, although their body snatching element does bring to mind other elements from shows or movies such as They Live and Invasion of the Body Snatchers, but it works in this show's context. I honestly like that they didn't fight some comic book villain as the big bad, although the secondary villain of the White Dragon was taken from the comics. He was not the show's primary threat. It's become almost expected for TV shows and movies based on comics to adapt their enemies and even their stories from the comic books. While it can be fun to see such things come to life on the big or small screen, I think we get robbed of letting the writers in a different medium put their own stamp and create something original for this world. I mean, if not for past comic adaptations doing that, we wouldn't have gotten Harley Quinn, among other great characters. Do I think the Butterflies will become the next great superhero threat? Highly unlikely. But I also enjoyed seeing our heroes face a threat we had no preconceived notions about or no expectations to deal with. So we didn't know what was coming or have to deal with them changing something just for the sake of surprising comic book fans. On a final note, I have to talk about the cameo that happened in the last episode, i.e. the Justice League appearing. Well, they were not needed. It was a fun little surprise to see them get a cameo, even if most of them were played by stand-ins. And Peacemaker's line to them upon seeing them made it worth every second of their short time on the show. And props to Jason Momoa and Ezra Miller for showing up and filming their scenes. That I was not expected even upon seeing the Justice League. All in all, Peacemaker is a great series, and I honestly can't say much bad about it. Its vulgar humor and graphic violence might surprise some who are used to more family-friendly approach to the MCU and most of the DCEU takes, but I like that DC's not afraid to be more experimental and let the show stand on their own instead of relying on some consistent tone that constrains their creativity. They haven't always delivered when doing that, but I think we've got some great stuff that if they tried to maintain a more consistent, family-friendly tone on everything, we probably wouldn't have gotten. It does mean some projects might play better than others, but also means they can produce some truly great stuff with that added freedom. One such example, Peacemaker. Peacemaker was unsurprisingly renewed for a second season, which seems like almost a given, as HBO MAX has said it's the most successful series so far. And I can't wait for Season 2 because even if it's only half as good as Season 1, it would still be great. Thanks for watching. You can check out my other reviews of DC TV shows by clicking the thumbnail you see here. And if you like this video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share the video. I'm Dan the Man, and I'll see you next time.